and this is the Awesome Vegans Influencer Series right here live on Jane Unchained. Now, sometimes you've seen me pre-tape my radio show on Jane Unchained, and that's what I'm going to do today. So, of course, it's always the Awesome Vegans Influencer Series on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. here on Jane Unchained, but I'm also going to be doing a little radio talk as I repurpose this for my Sunday's radio show. So let me go get started with that. And I just want to give you a sneak peek before I do. Look who my guest is today. I'm so excited to have Dustin Watten here with me. He is Team USA volleyball champion. He's going to, so don't go away. He's going to come back in just a little bit right after I start my radio show. So I appreciate everybody being with me today and all that you do. Please share this out. It does make a huge difference. Okay, folks, pre-tape. Hey, everybody, it's the Elysabeth Alfano radio show right here on WCGO. Thanks for being with me. And of course, remember that if you can't belly up to the dial on 1590 AM and 95.9 FM, you can always listen to WCGO and the Elysabeth Alfano radio show by going to WCGOradio.com and saying, "Hey, Alexa, play me WCGO." And if you're listening on the WCGO Facebook page or online and you're saying, how come I don't have a plant-based radio show in my hometown? Well, just tell your local station to go to the Smart Talk Radio Network and get the Elysabeth Alfano radio show. Okay, so if you've been with me before, Sundays at 3 p.m. Central Time, you know that I start by breaking down the news. It's been a discouraging couple of days, I do have to say. I read from the New York Times, Trump has issued an executive order using the Defense Protection Act to mandate that slaughterhouses continue to function. The world's biggest slaughter companies, Smithfield, Cargill, JBS, Tyson, have all halted operations at about 20 slaughterhouses in North America as workers fall ill. The order is designated in part to give companies legal cover with more liability protection in case employees catch the virus. I'm so discouraged by this, and I'm discouraged by the chairman of Tyson, John Tyson, taking out a full-page ad in the New York Times. To me, that ad saying that, oh my gosh, the food industry is breaking was doing us all a disservice. The food supply chain is broken. That's why we're focusing on plant-based foods and the plant-based foods industry. It makes no sense to throw good money after bad and open slaughterhouses, these wet markets that make us sick. We are experiencing now a global pandemic. How much more do we need to get the message? So it's very frustrating to see that there's no focus on getting out of this, moving forward, and that meat and dairy and the administration are so in bed together that one drop of an ad in the New York Times and President Trump is signing away the health fate of many individuals. Discouraging to me, but here is something that is encouraging. We might not have leadership from the White House, but oh, hey ho, look who is going to China and focusing on the world meat supply. Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat eye bigger cut of COVID-19 driven growth in Asia's plant-based food segments. Last month, Impossible Foods stepped up its expansion efforts in Asia with the relocation of Nick Hala, a senior vice president, to Hong Kong. Hala said in an interview that Asia represents 44% of meat consumption and about 700 billion pounds globally. And that's the number that's projected to grow by 70% by 2050. So Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods and Just Eggs are starting to focus on Asia, and they're not the only ones. I'll just say this is a little bit of a deep dive into business today, but I want you guys to all understand the businesses that are trying to get us to a safer food supply. And that means a safer future. And that's done with plant-based foods. This comes from Vegconomist. Even more news from China. Venture capitalist firm New Crop Capital, they were behind Beyond Meat, got in on the early days. And Chinese investment partner Dow Foods have launched a plant-based startup and entrepreneurial incubator in China. So there's a lot of focus on changing meat consumption, even if it isn't happening right here in the United States. Oh my gosh. Well, that's the news for today. So I'm going to switch it to some really good feeling, happy news. Let me bring on today's guest. I love him for all that he teaches us and inspires us. Team USA is in the house. I want to thank volleyball champion Dustin Watten for joining me today. Justin, how the heck are you?
Amazing. Yeah. From sunny California. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was in Poland, but so happy to be back home and be with family and just, using this time to pivot and just finding the abundance already in our life and trying to be creative.
You're so great at that. I love already we're like 30 seconds in and you're talking about abundance and joy. I love you for that. Well, let me ask you first, let's get to the basics. As a professional athlete, this is how you survive. I've had other professional musicians and performers on this show, the Awesome Vegans Influencer series on Jane Unchained, and you can't do your job. I mean, you can't be in stadiums doing what you do best, which is, what's it called? A slam. You're like slam dunking things, and that's maybe basketball, confusing my metaphors. But what's it like to be stuck at home not playing sports?
Yeah, so I was playing in Poland because in the US we don't have a professional league. And so for a month I was in kind of quarantine there, and then another month here. And I really use, stoicism a lot as my guide or compass throughout life. And then, in times like this, you just have to accept and kind of surrender to what's going on. Of course, if we get to a really bad place where we can revolt or start a revolution, but I don't think we're there yet. And so the big thing for me is not resenting, resisting, and being angry and frustrated. It's accepting what is, to love one's fate. I love this phrase, amor fati. And then trying to figure out ways I can pivot. There's 4 foundations that are really big for me: purpose, intention, service, and love. And so just trying to pivot and seeing how I can give in a moment where more naturally the feeling is lack and scarcity. So I've been working a lot with younger athletes, speaking about my journey, not necessarily the successes that I've had or the championships, but the failures, the setbacks, dealing with stress, pressure, shame, and hoping that through sharing my message and being more vulnerable with them, they realize that they're not the only ones having and going through these emotions, because that's what I hear a lot on my Instagram when people reach out, and then giving them the tools so when they do get back on the court, they'll be ready and more in a growth mindset and excited to experience these challenges and failures.
Well, let me ask you, do you only work with athletes? So when you share these messages, who is receiving all this great information?
Yeah, so this is kind of the new path, and it's a path I'm really excited to begin. I still have a contract for next year, and I still think I might play 2 or 3 more years as professional, because then I get to kind of live my philosophy a little bit more. But everyone, right now I'm talking just with youth volleyball clubs, because this, for me, it's very easy, this language, to connect with them, and for them maybe to have a wider ear to listening. Because what I found out is a lot of coaches and club directors, they love this stuff, mindfulness, and they try and talk it to or communicate it with the players, but it's kind of like all right, mom, or all right, dad. But as a professional, they're a little more attentive, and they're like, oh yeah, maybe I'll try this. And the coach is like, I've been saying this the whole time. But yeah, the message for me, it's clear for everyone. The big thing is just like relearning what failure means to us, and knowing that when we fail, we can grow even more. And sometimes we kind of need to get our bottom burnt for us to, start moving forward. And a lot of times in my career, I've been at a point where I wasn't playing well enough, and it's like, maybe I won't have a contract for next year. And so when I have risen, I've had to be more creative, more thoughtful, more mindful, more intentional with how I work going forward into the future. And so I've just been really open that there's always a better way. I'm so passionate about my sport, but also this curiosity. There might be a better way. And that's kind of how I got into veganism and being plant-based.
Well, we're certainly going to talk about all that when we come back from break. Just a quick note that I think Michael Jordan always says that he was such a success, not because he was so particularly skilled or even worked so hard at it, but because he was willing to fail so many times again and again on the court. Dustin Watten, I love having you as a guest. This is not the first time I've interviewed you. You're always such an inspiration, and you do have your great plant-based story because you're a plant-based athlete, but then also that you're always giving back. And I think no matter what industry we work in, be it sports or as a chef or whatever that might be, we can, in fact, always give back. So stick around, everybody. We're going to head to break. But right after I come back to break, I'll be back with Dustin Watten to learn all about how he stays fit. Sit tight. Awesome. Okay, that's the first segment. This is a behind-the-scenes pre-tape of the Elysabeth Alfano radio show. Let me just take about 10 seconds here, and we'll get back on the clock. It goes pretty quickly. So Dustin, I want to hear all that you have to say and all the great words you have to share. So thank you for being here with me. I really do appreciate it. It's the Elysabeth Alfano Show. Thanks for being back with me, everybody. I have Team USA professional volleyball champion Dustin Watten in the house. So before we went to break, you were talking about how you have this philosophy that you like to share with younger athletes and younger kids about how, sometimes failure is what you need to propel you forward. Before we get into more of your inspirational words, let's take a step back for a second. Why volleyball, and how did you become a professional athlete?
Yeah, volleyball, I mean, it was kind of always there for me. My dad was a coach, but growing up in Long Beach, California, for me, it was a girls' sport. I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to play soccer. But when I transferred from middle school to high school, all my friends went that way. I went this way. And I really didn't have any friends. And so I played on the soccer team during the winter season. And going into the spring sports season, I found out a lot of guys from the soccer team were going to play for volleyball. My dad was asked once again if he wanted to coach me because he was still working at the high school. And again, I said no. But once I found out all my teammates from soccer were going to play, I was like, okay, this could be a nice way to finally have some friends, in high school. And so that's how it started. And I just fell in love with it. Being in California, we have the beach. And so it naturally led to beach volleyball. And that's just what my childhood was. I was really bad when I first started. My claim to fame is my club team got last place in nationals the first year I played. But I think it really helped me because I've always naturally had this growth mindset, because in the beginning I failed so hard. I was arguably the worst player in the nation. And so the only place for me to go was up. And so throughout my journey in high school, college, even now, when great athletes fail, it's more so like, well, I guess I'm not good enough anymore. For me, it's just like I've always failed. And so it's just like, what can I learn? How can I pivot? How can I grow? How can I work with more intention? What's working? What's not? What can I shed from my life that's taking time from me to be more mindful and intentional throughout the day outside of practice? And so it's just fun. And same thing with life. It's just always looking to see how I can be a little bit better. So I love that aspect about volleyball.
Yes, and I just love listening to you. Really, it's just a source of joy for me. I love what you say about how you kind of fell into volleyball randomly, because it just goes to show you how random life is, and yet how focused we have to be at the same time. So, I mean, you must work out. We'll get to your workout routine in a little bit, but you're very dedicated. It's not like you don't give all of your time and energy to this, and you're very focused. But it came to you randomly, and then also you talk about how sometimes you think you're on the right path and you fail and you have to pivot. So life is this balance of stay focused, but be willing to change at any moment. I mean, how do you kind of handle that?
Yeah, so back to Stoicism, I love this thought of the dichotomy of control. Some things are completely within our control. Some things are not completely within our control. Too often we get lost over here believing that there's a lot of things within our control, and that could be something like working hard and getting the promotion, playing good in sports and expecting to start. Even like in relationships, being very loving, very charismatic, very giving. But you know what? You can't control how your partner also feels about you. If that's a reflection back to you, we can't control this, but we can control things like our attitude, our ability to set goals, our intention, our effort, our actions, and our ability to give. We can always love. Even sometimes, when that love isn't being reflected back to us, we can always love unconditionally. And so it's a balance for me, but it's realizing things that are not within my control. Say a coach doesn't start me, I don't make the team, my team loses, realizing that's not completely within my control. And because of this, I'm able to surrender and let it go quicker, pivoting that problem into a solution, and things that I can control, where it's like, okay, I lost the game, let's get a healthy meal, let's go back home, stretch, meditate. And then the next morning, I can begin with maybe some more intentional work, and maybe going over the video and seeing what I can improve on. Or maybe my relationship isn't going that well, being able to journal, reflect on it. How can I be more loving? Or, maybe if I don't want to put in the effort, I should let it go. And so I think realizing what's within our control, accepting whatever happens, like in the present moment, we are like in the past a little bit because it's already happened. And then pivoting, okay, what can I do now? At this moment of time, how can I best pivot and give?
It's amazing what you're saying to me because so much of this comes from this internal self-reflection. And yet at the same time, this is not an individual sport. So it's not like you're golfing and it's just you. It's
Yeah,
you with a team. So do you work on these philosophies with your team or do you work on them through workouts and practices together? How does that go?
not at all. I'm definitely outlier to say the least.
Is that right?
Well, the thing when we go professional is for example, I've lived in Finland, France, Germany, Poland, Brazil, and and when I travel, I'm pretty much on a team by myself. I'm on a team, but at
Hmm.
the end of the year, it's how I perform that reflects on if I'm going to get re-signed, if I'm going to get a bigger contract, or am I going to go down? And so a lot of this work, it's necessary for myself because at the end of the year, what do I have to show for? And so I'm very particular throughout the day how I work. Upon rising, meditating, journaling, having a delicious smoothie bowl. And it's my choices at the end of the day will reflect on how I continue along my journey. And again, I can't control the perceptions of other coaches, of managers, of presidents, if they want to sign me or not. But I can control waking up with intention, working with purpose, going in early, working hard, committing to my mental, physical, and emotional health. These are things that I can control, which therefore most likely will correlate to those things out of my control, like my reputation or perception of me.
It's funny because this seems as much as a dedicated practice as the actual physical practice. So I'm wondering if you could work us through your workout routine or practice either with the team and on your own, and how that's coupled with meditation, or because you seem to be doing a lot of thinking. So
Yeah,
how does that come
absolutely.
together, the two of them?
Yeah, I'll give you some of my normal day. At the end of the year in Poland, when I had a little more time, I wake up. Uh, I don't do this every day, but hour meditation. After that, journal. Uh,
Wow.
do some movement, maybe some core exercise, just to get the body moving. Roll it out. I'll make a delicious smoothie bowl. Put some sprouted buckwheat on top of that. Maybe some fresh fruit.
Yum.
I'll have that. Take some time, relax, read, maybe watch a little YouTube, have a matcha, go to my first training. Maybe we'll say it's a lifting day. So I go lift with my teammates. Um, from there, I'll come back. I'll have another smoothie bowl. I'm a big fan of smoothie bowls. And then I pretty much get to work. I have this thing called the list, and it's a bunch of micro tasks that I commit to every day. And if I accomplish them, I highlight it. If I don't accomplish them, I circle it. And it's like a little scorecard of myself because I like to use my goals not necessarily as like as an end line or salvation, but as like a compass for how I'm working throughout the day. If I want to be an Olympian, how does an Olympian work? What would an Olympian do throughout the day?
Mm.
And so some of the things in my list is meditation, journaling, watching film, having a coffee cut off for my sleep,
Mm.
stretching at night. Um, there's like 24 things now, and so different things for my mind too. Reading each day, writing. I try to meditate 3 times a day, journaling in the morning, journaling to end the day. And so again, like for me, it's just the curiosity. I can always, learn something more about myself, about the environment. And in turn, it will give me more space to respond to those things that I can't control
Mhm.
while, going within me to find, maybe a little more power than I initially thought I had.
So what I find is interesting is that you're so dedicated to working on yourself. It is this practice of working on yourself, and plant-based diet, of course, becomes a big part of that as a professional athlete because you want to perform at your highest level, but also for your inner zen, which you seem to have a lot of, which is very impressive. I wonder if you could give us any tips of how you start journaling or how you start meditating. For one, have been wanting to meditate for the longest time. I can't seem to settle my mind enough to actually sit down even for a short meditation of 10 to 15 minutes, and you go for an hour. So maybe you have some tips to get us started.
Yeah, I love the quote from Franklin. I'm not going to say it perfectly, but in between stimulus and response is space. In that space is our power to choose. In our choice is our freedom and power. I know I gotta learn the quote right, but I just love having that space in between stimulus and response. It can be
Mhm.
something as simple as like someone cutting you off, or maybe your boss, making a decision that you felt that you should have got the raise. And so with that space that we increase through meditation, we're able to to make decisions, to choose our words, to choose our actions that most align with our highest self and how we want to operate in the world. And for me, it's with love and compassion to give. So meditation is a big part. When I first started using Headspace. Just do 5 minutes a day. And then after that, after maybe 4 years, I did my first Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. Where you can only do 4 things. You can meditate, you can sleep, you can eat, and you can walk, and that's it. So that was pretty cool. And then after that, kind of stopped using Headspace and just continued kind of the practice from Vipassana, just focusing on the sensation of the breath or the air going in and out my nostrils. But it's just big. Developing equanimity, I think, is a big thing that everyone should pursue, because again, things are going to happen all throughout the day, all throughout your life, especially with family, where it's just like, this shouldn't be happening, you know? And we're so quick to judge. And as we kind of talked about before, sometimes things that happen in our life go against our personal preferences, right? But sometimes these things are like the best things that could ever happen to us. And so we need to fight the natural urge to judge things as good or bad, and just be open and curious. Like, what is this opportunity showing me? You know, what light is this shining on me? So again, like with this situation right now, you know, to say the least, I lost a lot of money with my club. President cut a lot of the contract. Going to lose all the money I was expecting to earn with the national team this year, and you know, playing. But you know what? You know, you have to pivot, love one's fate rather than resist it. And now it's a great time for me to maybe start my new journey, my new path of giving back to younger athletes. And I almost feel like I have the responsibility to give back, because I worked so hard outside the court and to help create that space, that consciousness, that mindfulness that really younger athletes can benefit so much from.
Yeah, well, you certainly seem to have a book in you and are very much a motivational speaker. So I can see as you transition out of professional volleyball, whenever that time feels right for you, that you might make that leap. But I love all of what you're saying, because I think it gets so many of us in the right headspace right now, when there's so much, I feel, fear mongering going on in the papers about our food source, et cetera. Obviously, you and I have been vegan for a long time. There's lots of food out there, folks. It's rice and beans. Like, don't worry about it. You're going to have a lot of food. So I feel like this is a time when people are particularly in panic mode. And I think getting that sense of control over what you can control in your life really helps give people a sense of joy and peace rather than fear and panic. We're going to go to break, but when I come right back, we're going to get back with Dustin Watten, Team USA Volleyball Champ. It's the Elysabeth Alfano Show on WCGO. Well, there we go. Segment 2. Oh, gosh, you are such an inspiration, Dustin. I love having you. We're going to go right back to segment 3 of the radio show. And then we've got, after that, Dustin is just with us to spend as much time as we can. I want to hear all about that fabulous plant-based diet. So let's get into it. It's the Elysabeth Alfano Show. Thanks for staying with me, everybody, on WCGO. I have Team USA Volleyball Champion Dustin Watten with me. Okay, you have won gold medals in the Pan American Games. You've won the championship game for the World Cup. You are a seasoned athlete. You've been at it for quite a long time now. Let's get into diet. So what do you eat in a regular day, and when did you decide to go plant-based?
Yeah, I eat a lot of raw food, actually. Right now, I'm a big fan of 2 things: smoothie bowls and sprouted buckwheat.
Sprouted buckwheat. Do you grow it at home?
Yeah, it's really easy. Really, really
wonderful.
easy. I've always kind of gone against it. And there's this great lady in Germany I can connect you with who's all about sprouting. She's like, sprout, sprout, sprout. I'm like, yeah. And then when I finally went to Germany, I met a great friend, and he was all about it too. And he like made me order it. And I was like, okay, I'll get to it. And he like sent me the link for Amazon. I was like, okay, I'll order it. It's so easy. You just soak it, and then you drain it, and then you just let it sit for like a day and a half, 2 days.
Right.
And it's like so pure, so natural, so crunchy. It's like a next level cereal. And so I love having in the morning, I'll do like a green cinnamon almond butter smoothie bowl, either a lot of kale, spinach, maybe both, maybe a frozen banana, some dates. And then on top of that, fresh fruit, sprouted granola, maybe some more dates. I'm a date sweet tooth guy. And then sometimes maybe I'll do oatmeal, some turmeric ginger oatmeal. I love that.
Turmeric ginger oatmeal. Oh my gosh. That sounds
Yeah.
fantastic. And that's your breakfast?
Yeah. So I usually like to do a smoothie bowl or oatmeal to start the day. And then same thing for lunch. I just, being overseas, we have like a pretty clear routine and things don't really change. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we train, and Saturday game, and just like same thing, same thing, same thing. So throughout the years, I've kind of experimented, and I just noticed when I have a cooked meal during lunch, I just feel a little slower, a little more lethargic, a little more inflamed for evening practice. And so kind of my rule, how I operate is like once the last practice of the day is over, then I can eat cooked food, not a big deal. But I just feel a lot more fresh. It's easier on my digestive system, and I don't need as much caffeine, which will help me sleep better that night too.
Sure, sure, and perform better. So tell me about your teammates. You arrive on the scene, you're already pretty zen, and so you don't have this, one might think of a professional athlete as being very aggressive and very in your face and sort of argumentative, we'll say, in a physical way, but you are quite the opposite of that, and you have this plant-based diet and this meditation routine and self-reflection. How does your team perceive you, work with you, deal with you?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I used to be that person, very aggressive, like me versus you, like I'm gonna kill you.
Mm,
And I mean, if we want to go in this, we can. But once I went vegan, that stuff started changing. It was really interesting.
I love that.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
let's dive into that. What do you mean? So you're a professional athlete, and one would think again that your kind of job is to be aggressive. But then you go vegan. I want to hear how you went vegan, but also I want to hear about the changes. You went vegan and your attitude changed. Tell me about that.
yeah. So real quick, in between my second and third year, I started reading a lot of books on mindset, sports psychology, because I needed to be better in that category. And right before I left to go to France for my third year, I went to Barnes and Noble and just went to sports section, just grabbed books that looked like sports psychology, mindfulness, and I picked up Rich Broll's book, and pretty much by accident. But I got to the plane, read a little bit here, read a little bit here on each book, and then I finally got to Rich Roll's book, and I read the whole book on the plane. And the first thing I was like, "Wow, what did I do? I just read a whole book." I was like, "Wow, good job, Dustin." But then I was like, "Am I gonna go vegan?" And I was like, let's try it. Because for me, before that, it was just like I was very alpha, like I wanted to pursue the things that would like lift my status of a man, and that was like being strong, getting great contracts, having lots of money, having like women idolize me, whatever it may be, like typical, like I'm
Put the
20
car
years
in there. Go ahead, do it.
like 20 years old guy, and just like pursuing ego gratification. And but anyways, like the big thing was like I just everywhere, Subway, Chipotle, I want double meat because I want to be strong. I was that type of person. So I read Rich Roll's book, and I was just like, you know what? All throughout my life, I've been like catching up. And to catch up to other people, you have to do things a different way, a better way, right? And so it first started with, working hard in the gym, watching video on my opponents, starting to stretch more, and I was getting into reading. And this was kind of the next thing. I was like, well, for sure, I'm going to be the only volleyball player that's plant-based, and like maybe it even helps. And so I was just like, all right, I'll try it. And I kind of went into like the pit of vegan hell, which is France. I've heard it's changed a lot, but it was really difficult at first because everything is cheese and meaty. But I was just kind of learning on fire, and parents sent me a bunch of books, Brendan Brazier's Thrive, Scott Jurick's, and then I finally got to the China study, which my family has definitely a heart condition, and so after a China study, I was like, why would I ever change?
T. Colin Campbell's book, The China Study. Yes.
I was like, because I was still, that ego gratification where it's just like, I want to lift, I want to be strong, I want to be a man, and I was still able to lift well, and I was like, you know what, I feel pretty good too. And I started to change, like not eating as much protein. And I was like, I'm starting to feel like really light and strong. And so I was just like, it turned off. It was like a two-month like hypothesis, like trial. And I was just like, it feels great. I didn't know any vegans, any vegetarians. At first, it wasn't ethical at all. It was just like, maybe this works better and maybe it doesn't.
And then how did your team perceive you? So you do this 2-month trial yourself. You basically read the book on the plane, and kind of by the end of the flight, the overnight flight to Europe, you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to go vegan. You try it, you decide to do it. You're performing well, if not better.
Yeah.
What does your team say?
More or less ignorance. And I don't blame them for it because again, it's like everyone wants to be right or smart or witty, especially in athletics. And
Mm.
so lots of jokes like rabbit eating grass, etc. And at first I was like so defensive, like you don't know what you're talking about, like you haven't read this book, you don't know how I feel, or like da 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 da. And I realized throughout the years, it's just like it's not the way to go. I have the ability to perceive how other people react to me, and I think the best way is just like laughter or even more like self-deprecation. Where like when I was in Poland, like one of my young teammates would be, I was like waiting for the vegan soup, and one of the teammates would be like, "Oh, like the food's right behind me," and it's like a plastic plant, and everyone laughed, and I'd be like, "No, I had some grass outside," and everyone laughed some more. And so, you can't control how people are going to perceive you, but you can control how you react to how they perceive you. And so for me, it's just with love and compassion. And if they want to know more, I'm happy to tell them. I had that path where I was telling everyone like, you should do it. It's going to be great for your tendonitis, da, 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 da. But for me, it's just like leading by example, being super fit, being lovely, like creating lovely smoothie bowls. And then when people want to come and what they want to know, then I'm really happy to share. So I don't know. I'm like kind of divided because now I'm very ethical as well. But I don't think the best way for me is to push people into it. But it's just to put out my hand. And if they come, great. And if they don't, they're on their own path. And hopefully they'll come one day.
And so has anyone been jumping over the aisle, as I'll say? I mean, you are an athlete and you're performing well. So there's got to be something going on in their head saying like, oh, there might be something to this plant-based thing. He's
Yeah.
really performing well.
Yeah. So my roommate, he's in his position, he's the best in the world.
Wow.
And so again, he was the guy where I was like, come on, you should do it. I'm just pushing him. And he's like, get away, like get away. And eventually we started living together. And I'm like, I'm not going to have you cook. I don't want like meat on the dishes and stuff like that, or cooking utensils. So I was like, I'll cook for you. And he's like, all right. And so I started cooking for him, and he's like, didn't want to say it at first, but I was like, well, that's pretty good. And then he started to feel good. And in volleyball, it's like I'd say a big problem no one talks about. Everyone just pops ibuprofen like it's no other. And it's just like you walk into practice and you're just like, and so for my position, it's not as intense on the body. For his position, it's really intense. And after going plant-based, he really stopped having to take ibuprofen. We crush turmeric, ginger, and we do juices, and the proof was in the vegan pudding sort of sense. And so he went back to Italy for his professional career. And the next year he came back and he's like, yeah, I didn't, once in a while he'd have some meat or fish with the team. But he said when he cooked in the kitchen, everything was plant-based. And now I think he's like as plant-based as possible without using the V word, because he still doesn't really like it. But he's like all in to like plant-based. And even the coaches and nutritionists have tried to tell him that he needs to eat meat. And he's like, no, my body feels better like this. You can't tell me what to do. My body feels great.
Well, there's so many plant-based athletes now, not to mention, of course, the Game Changers movie, but I would think that there'd be more and more athletes considering this kind of diet. I'm wondering what kind of tips you can give, because there are a lot of men out there who want to get off this awful circular path of eating meat to feel better, but they're not quite sure how to do it. Do you have any tips that you would give us?
Yeah, I think the big
Or how to
thing,
start?
the switch is just tough, because especially as athletes, you've gotten so far doing this, that you're like, well, it works, And so I think a lot of people are hesitant just because they've already gotten so far in their careers. But those people that are open and curious for a better way, I think it's just so easy to start with breakfast, Do some oatmeal, throw the toppings, fruit, nuts, seeds, granola.
Chia seeds, yeah.
There's so many different ways you can customize it. You can do a smoothie. You don't have to be vegan to love and thrive off smoothies. But I think just taking baby steps and then committing yourself to reading a little bit about it, because it is, if you want to do it at a high level, it does take some understanding of nutrition, especially just like calorie in, calorie out. But I think people that want to do things at the highest level, whether it's sports, business, being a great father, mother, you should take the time to reflect. You should take the time to seek out people and better information. So I think starting with breakfast and then just pick up a book and start reading. There's so many great information and sources on YouTube, on Instagram. And I think the biggest thing is like you just feel like you're going to be losing out on something. But when you go vegan, you realize how much food there is that you've never even thought of or ate. And so that's like the biggest thing. It's just like you have to incorporate more because you don't have like this big thing of steak that takes up 80% of the calories on the plate. You can't just do that with like beans. And so you get to learn and thrive with so many different colors, textures, taste, and I don't know. There's just so much abundance, but I think starting with a breakfast.
Well, I think people can hear it in your voice. There's so much abundance in a plant-based diet. You've listed so many things for us. I'll also throw people to my website, ElysabethAlfano.com. You can see all the recipes there. So many of them easy, smoothies and juices, but also more, Chicago-style Italian beef for you lovers out there. And you can start slowly. I hope that you will stick around with me. You guys can listen to more on the Awesome Vegans podcast. It's the end of radio for now. Join me next Sunday on the Elysabeth Alfano Show on WCGO. Hey, stick around with me. Thanks everybody on Jane Unchained. That was fun. We just recorded the radio show for Sunday, but now we get to talk to Dustin without commercials. I love all the tips that you give everyone. And when you couple those tips with how inspiring you are, I really think that a lot of people can quote unquote digest this information very easily. One of the things I like to do at the end of my interviews is talk to people about some kind of quick exit questions. So some of these are longer than others, but I'd love to hear what are your predictions for the future? So you get to travel the world. You're in Poland, France, competing 10 months out of the year, really, by not being at home and traveling the world. So you see the world from a different perspective than we do. We all know it's going vegan, but I wonder if you can, even more specific than that, where do you think things are going in like the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think the big thing is just more athletes coming up through the ranks. Like I said, it's tough for pros. I mean, there are some like very conscious and mindful athletes. Chris Paul, example, like at the end of his career, he is like, let's go plant-based. Tom Brady's mostly plant-based, but a lot of athletes are just like kind of stubborn, and it's just like my will and just like straight will combined with athletic talent, and that's where they are. And so I think younger athletes having examples of these role models, and they're coming up plant-based. I think we're going to see more of those in some of the major sports like NFL, NBA, and baseball. And so I think when we have those examples and people that are killing it at high level, combined with the ethical and environmental benefits, I think it's just going to be more and more excitement around the plant-based movement.
Yeah, I do too. I think particularly as people start to make the connection with the pandemic that we have going on, that 75%, according to the CDC, pandemics are meat-borne. So, we don't want to be in this position again. And currently, we're not doing much to change our situation. We're keeping slaughterhouses open. We're keeping wet markets open. Those are the sources of pandemics. Please, why am I the only one thinking that we need to change and pivot? You're all about pivot. So perhaps you can go advise the White House on pivoting because, we don't want to just be back here again without a job. Look at all the money you've lost with your contracts falling apart. We're all in the same situation. And, reacting out of a place of fear and not looking forward to the innovation to get us out of this situation is really short-sighted, in my opinion. Okay, so what do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now? Because you've been in volleyball almost 10 years. Is that right?
Yeah. I think, so much of the path I've chosen in ignorance has led me to where I am today. And so I don't know. I think I would let it be. But if there was anything, if I had to choose, realizing the power of meditation and journaling to get the most intention out of each day and align with my goals. Maybe still my goal in college was to be the best video game player, and so I could be more intentional on that. But I think it's just so powerful, intention, gratitude, and then the ability to reflect at the end of the day and recalibrate, what went well, what went wrong, and how we can use those challenges into purpose and intention for the next day. And so just squeezing the most out of each day through journaling. And then again, increasing the space between stimuli and response through meditation. I just think is so powerful.
Wow. Okay. That's my takeaway from this interview is that I've got to get myself into meditation so that I can have those calm moments when I'm not reacting or running and just being. That's what I'm working on. Thank you to you, Dustin. I'm wondering, you kind of talked about it, but when was the moment, like the exact moment? I know you said you picked up Rich Roll's book and you read the book, but after trying, I wonder if there's an exact time or situation that occurred that you said, that's it. I am going to do this vegan thing and I'm not going back.
Yeah, I was in the middle of reading China Study. I was just like, oh, what's the point?
What's the point?
I've always asked my mom, I was like, why do people die and get cancer? Like, why do people die of heart disease? She's like, well, you know, like, wasn't an answer. But reading the China Study, it was just like, well, like, you know,
it's the food you eat.
I don't necessarily need to be here for 100 years, you know, but when I am here, I want to live the best life possible. I want to be able to move. I want to be able to function, to have clarity, how I think, how I respond, and just to be of value to the community and to the environment the best I can. You know, I don't want to have these problems. And I've talked about this before. Like, I think what a man is someone that's a provider. You can't provide when you're in a hospital, dying of a heart attack. And so I think being a man, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, a lot of different new ways I think males should pivot. But I think first and foremost, taking care of our health so we have the biggest and strongest foundation to provide to those around us. And then also compassion and love. I think these things are very powerful, and it shouldn't be limited to other people outside of men. Men should find it. And you know, I think when we're operating out of that space, out of that love, out of compassion, we're going to make decisions that not only align with ourselves, but our family and our community. And when more people start doing that, I think we can raise the consciousness. And I think that's really powerful.
I do too. And thank you for sharing that message and for underscoring it for us. So I want to ask you one of my last questions for you. You seem to have many good days. You seem to be very focused and always having your intentions set and sort of focusing only on what you can control and not on what you can't control. But if you're ever having a bad day and you can't quite get in the space that you want to get into, is there a phrase that you tell yourself to get right back in the game?
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of bad days. There are days where it's like, okay, well, maybe. And so how I get to that point is I have a sticky on my wall and it says, "This is good because." And so I love this because so often we just focus on the problem. Like, that person said this, the boss is a jerk, da 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 da. And you can say, like, say for example, my boss is a jerk. This is good because I can practice more patience. I can practice more unconditional love. I can lean on the space I'm working to create meditation, to not react when he says anything, to not gossip, knowing that these things don't align with my highest self. Or if I had a bad game, it's like, this is good because I can be more intentional with my training. I can get to practice earlier. And so always being quick to recognize the problem, because I think it's important. We have to be honest with ourselves, right? Recognize the problem, be honest with the challenges that we're experiencing, but be quick to find solutions for ourselves. And again, as a man, you have to be a provider. Find the solution, or find the problem, and then find the solution as quick as possible. And just continually to find and to pivot. And I think that's just really powerful. So for me, this is good because, and then if it's a really bad day, I just make sure I meditate a little bit more so I can have that clarity and kind of let my thoughts manifest out for me.
Meditate. Okay, I get it. I get the message. So my last question for you, and you just might not have a junk food, but I'm wondering, are there any indulgences that you let yourself have? Do you have a favorite plant-based junk food?
You know what? Yeah. What? You know what? In Polish, because in Chicago it's a big Polish population, right? I love Poland so much. Poland's where my heart is. But they have a big thing for ogórek, or pickles, cucumbers.
Yes.
And so in the city I lived in this year, there was a vegan ogórek, a vegan like a pickle pizza. And it's just like, in Poland, it's just like, how do they make these foods work? But they just do. And also pierogies. Sorry, Polish pierogies. Oh, but pierogi festivals, I'm crushing, taking everything. So pierogies and pickled pizza.
Pierogies, don't they have meat? No, or maybe they're potato. I forget.
For sure, they have meat. The biggest one, most popular in Poland, is the Ruski pierogi, the Russian, and that is cottage cheese and potatoes. So a lot of them are actually vegetarian, but they have lentils. Lentils and sauerkraut. lentils and sauerkraut. I think so. But they have a lot of vegan as well, and so
Okay.
you can find them. You just have to be a little sneaky.
Well, in this house, my partner loves to pickle things. And he loves to make bread as well. So pickled pizza is now going to be on the menu for this week. Wow, what an inspiration right there. Dustin Watten, I want to thank you for being with us. I hope that you will come back. It is always such an inspiration to have you. And for any of the young athletes out there that are looking to not just be the loud, aggressive guy, but just be at the top of their game and really find that inner strength to be as strong and as powerful and as good intentioned as Dustin, how can we find you?
Yeah, just Dustin on Instagram. I just want to be of service as much as I can. Usually when I write stuff on Instagram, it's just in mind, my audience is like a younger version of myself. Someone who's just really passionate, really curious about a better day, but doesn't really know where to go. And so I don't necessarily want to shape the path for younger players to walk, but give them the most information that they can be conscious and mindful in shaping their own path to greatness. And so Instagram is the easiest. And then, I'm using this time to speak as much as I can. So if I can be a benefit to your team, your company, I like to speak a lot about stoicism and how we can apply these ancient techniques for modern day life.
Wonderful. Dustin Watten, Watten on Instagram, Elysabeth Alfano on Instagram. And if you want some good recipes, get some good new plant-based ideas, tips in your head, you can go to elysabethalfano.com. But of course, the best way you can get Dustin Watten's message out there is to share this interview right now, right off of Facebook. Thank you to everybody for being. I saw Paige was in, Jane was in, Tom was in, Michelle was in, Nancy was in. A lot of people were in on the comments. So thanks everybody for watching. And together, we're taking back our health and the health of the planet. Thanks everybody for trying vegan. Dustin, I love you. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Bye, everyone. Sit tight, Dustin. Hold on.